Hello and welcome to Open Mind UFO Radio. This is your host, Alejandro Rojas. And look who's back, Mr. Martin Willis.
Yeah.
How you doing, dude?
I'm well. Yeah, just made it by the skin of my teeth, but I'm here.
Yo, everybody. Talking to the people who are joining live, saying hello. Definitely get your questions in there as we move along. But yeah, it's been a while. You've been off traipsing around, having a good time. I can't blame you because I know you're always complaining about the weather out there. But this is the time of the year where it's really gorgeous out there, huh?
Oh, it's the best. If you're ever going to come to Maine, this is the time of year you want to come. July, August. It's just gorgeous weather.
Just
and
gorgeous.
Yeah. And I'm right along the coast, and it's just so terrific.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of crowded with people. You know, I mean, a little too crowded, if you ask me. What's that?
With visitors?
Yeah.
Tourists?
Yeah.
Well, you know, because it's been like that out here. It's starting to slow down. I'm at the Open Minds headquarters right now in Encinitas, California, but it started to slow down, luckily. And August is when Europeans take nearly the whole month off. So
yeah,
I think
right.
that's
right.
Too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So kind of funny, but it's good to see you. Good to have you back. Were you having fun? What, you were on a boat last week?
Yeah.
I don't remember what you were doing a couple weeks ago.
I don't remember much beyond last week.
Your memory has been faulty.
Oh, yeah. No, but all good. Yeah.
Let's get into the news of the week. So a lot of stuff going on. I'll get into some of the stories and what I've been up to. But one of the big stories today, I don't know if you saw this, Lou Elizondo, who ran the government Pentagon program, joined Twitter.
Oh, my goodness. That's a big step for him, right?
Yeah, it is. So that's kind of funny. In fact, maybe I'll bring up the page.
I'll bring that
up here. But that's kind of fun to see him out there. I don't know, though, if I would totally recommend it. What do you think? I mean, it gets pretty crazy out there. Now, I think you spend a lot more time. I'm going to bring it up here so people can see his Twitter here, what he's up to right now. But you spend more time, I think, on Facebook than you Twitter, huh?
Yeah, I don't use Twitter too much. I'm not using Facebook right now, actually, too much at all. So, but
really,
yeah, just because of all the negativity.
Really, so you're taking a break from the negativity.
I am. Yeah.
I don't blame you.
I'll follow Lou.
Mm-hmm. So here he is. You could see he's just at Lou Elizondo, which is pretty cool. He's only got a couple posts here just saying, hey, we're all in this together, and I might not be able to respond to everybody, but I will read what you guys post. And oh my gosh, and look at this, 235 responses to his first, 96 to his second. There's no way he's going to be able to read all that. And I don't blame him if he doesn't.
Yeah. Pretty funny. He said the wrong thing right off the bat.
I know. I'm going to read all your responses. Yeah, right. Don't do that, Lou. You have more important stuff to do than read all those responses. And like you said, a lot gets pretty, there's a lot of negativity out there.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, you start announcing, I had a friend in California. I'm trying to remember, the comedian has a huge amount of followers. And he just mentioned his name. Follow him on Twitter like that. He said it just like this. Some guy was from Saturday Night Live years ago. And all of a sudden, this guy's Twitter gained like 60,000 people in 2 weeks. So
wow,
it's going to happen because you're announcing it on this show too. Lou's going to.
I know. So that's what's going to happen with Lou.
Yeah.
So speaking of Twitter, here's something else. I'm going to share this again because this is another piece of news. And actually, it came up, interestingly, it came up in a couple of interviews, and I'll talk about that real soon here. But let's take a look at this one, which is, here's George Knapp tweeted just a couple days ago, the 19th. Was that yesterday? Day before yesterday?
2 days
Just when
ago.
you
Yeah.
think the Pentagon Public Affairs and FOIA offices may have entered a new era of truth-telling and transparency, they circle back around to take another cheap shot at Lou and ATIP. Watch. He goes on to say, sorry, I don't have details. Heard from a DC contact that some sort of statement is coming from DOD. Don't know from whom. Oldies but goodies about how ATIP wasn't a UFO program and Elizondo wasn't part of it. He continues to say, okay, it won't be a statement. DOD sent a detailed response to a FOIA request. I'm deferring to the person who submitted the request to share it. And it appears that that person was Nick Pope, and I'll look in here in just a second. But here's what I posted. I posted my article, which I covered last week, and we can talk about this too if you want, Martin. But essentially, my article about how the Pentagon can't keep their story straight on UFOs and UAPs, where I kind of went through the whole history on three main topics. Those topics being whether or not ATIP had anything to do with UFOs, whether or not Elizondo was part of ATIP, and then finally, whether or not ATIP continued, the Pentagon project continued, because many have speculated, I would say, that this UAP task force that the Senate Intelligence Committee has been referring to and that the DOD just announced formally exists. Many have speculated that ATIP continued, and that's what this UAP task force is. We don't have confirmation of that, and I'll get into that a little more later. But Nick Pope said, because he must be that person. He said, there may be a FOIA request, but there will be a DOD statement too. They've been working on it for months, mainly in response to my question on the Drake equation and Lieutenant Tim McMillan's Popular Mechanics article. Some more details, background here, and he's got a link here. So what the heck is going on? I mean, if you read my article about all of this, I think that it's strange because their denials that Lou had anything to do with ATIP seem right from the get-go pretty silly. I've been reporting on this for quite a while, and of course, we've got everybody involved with the program that we know of, including, Chris Mellon. He wasn't directly involved with the program, but he was working with ATIP prior to Luis Elizondo leaving. Also, we have Harry Reid, who's confirmed that. Harry Reid also, he didn't leak this document. George Knapp leaked a document showing essentially a bigoted list for what they wanted to become an SAP, a special access program. They wanted ATIP to get that status in that bigoted list. And the bigoted list essentially means these are the need to know guys. These are the people who will be cleared for this program. And Luis Elizondo and Hal Puthoff are on that list. Why is Dr. Hal Puthoff important? Because Dr. Hal Puthoff was someone who worked on ATIP as a contractor, who also has confirmed, in fact, he confirmed to me directly, and I put that in my story, that yes, I reported to Lou Elizondo when I worked on ATIP. I also asked Eric Davis, another contractor on that program, who also confirmed that. So we have everybody confirming, and it's obvious. Lou's on television. He's working with the Navy. We know that Lou worked for ATIP, so why is the Navy or the DOD constantly or occasionally slipping in there, oh, Lou didn't work for ATIP? It's really weird.
Yeah, it is strange. And, I had a guest, John Michael Greer, and a lot of what last week, a lot of what he said was not too popular with my listeners. But one thing he did said, if the military is involved, the government's involved, don't trust it. He was basically, that was his, thing that he brought up many times. And it is funny. And now I know they're trying to push the fact that, hey, look, this isn't about, off planet. This is about foreign adversaries. And, that's what we're really looking for and all that. So there's a lot of, there is a lot of turns and steering. So I don't know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, it's really, my best guess is that I really think that it's kind of the Snowden treatment in a way, in that we're not letting him go type of thing. even though many people argue and many different international organizations have asked for amnesty for Snowden, he certainly, because of what he did, there was a lot of revelations that are probably that many feel are justified, that there were governments toppled from dictators doing bad things from some of the stuff that Snowden had released. So, but the government's like, no, we can't, let people think that it's okay to do this. And that's my guess is what's going on here, that they feel that they can't permit, Lou, while he was working on ATIP, was told, no, you can't take this information higher levels. So he left to get that information to the higher levels. So he essentially did an end run around his superiors, and it seems like they're upset about that, and they're going to make an example, and they're not going to let him get away with it. But the manner in which they're doing it is really undermining their own credibility.
I don't think they're worried about that.
You're right. And that's what's surprising. It doesn't seem like they care a lick about that.
Yeah. And, you think about it, the popularity of Unidentified, I mean, it's a great season, and the popularity is widespread. And I'm sure there's, people within the government that are watching it. And so maybe that's what's, inducing their forever to go after this, to make it like this. They don't want the attention.
I think you're right on that sense, but I think they also are not happy with bureaucratic meddling. When Chris Mellon had suggested that the Senate Intelligence Committee require the military intelligence to look into UAPs and to write a report on that, and to have a central location where this information is brought together, Chris Mellon recommended, he said, a lot of this information is going to be classified. This report would probably have to be classified. That's already kind of like, what, you're making us make this report, and plus we're caught off guard in that, the Senate certainly feels like, why weren't you giving us information? We need information. But now that the Senate Intelligence Committee has said, we want a public facing portion of this, that is a lot of work. It's going to bring scrutiny upon them that I'm sure they don't want. So they're probably really upset that, look what this is not resulted in something we want. We can handle this without people nagging us about it or all of this. So they're probably just not happy about all of what's going on, even though those of us are really happy about it.
Yeah.
That which brings us to another point, actually. But did you have any comments on that before I went on?
No, you're right. All this attention has moved things forward and to more scrutiny for sure.
Yeah. Here's my dog's visiting to our dog, and he's looking at me like, "Hey, what are you doing?" But the other thing is, this is kind of interesting. Oh man, I thought I lost my train of thought along those lines. But essentially, we'll get more into it. But
don't you hate when that happens?
Man, I know, and it was something good. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen just to show a couple other things related to this, and it's still this conversation, so I still may think of it. But here's the Open Minds website, of course. People can go there. It's new and improved. It doesn't look like any flashier than it used to, but it's more organized. I've got this trending. Got lots of great stories. It's running super quick, and I'm paying lots of money to make sure that it runs quickly. But, it's an important site, I feel like. So I'm happy to provide this service for everyone, keeping Open Minds alive. But there's two things that actually should be on here, but I am having troubles with one of them. The first is that I interviewed Lou Elizondo this week. And some of these topics came up, and this was prior to George Knapp posting that or tweeting that information. I also interviewed Adam Kehoe. And in fact, I'm going to bring up his website. because it's got
And
really
not,
good stuff on there. Have you
yeah,
seen Adam Kehoe stuff?
I have not. No.
So let me show you him real quick here. So he has a PhD in, I think it's information technology. Let me get his little bio here real quick so I can let people know accurately what he does instead of just making stuff up.
And not to be confused with Donald Kehoe. He's no relation, spelled differently.
Exactly. That's a really good point because I kept misspelling his name like Donald Kehoe. And he had to say, hey, I'm a wrong name. I wish I was related to him, but I'm not. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, here's some information about him. If you're a subscriber on YouTube, you can go watch this interview right now. Otherwise, I did fix the audio because it was a little messed up at first, and I'm trying to upload that to Patreon for my Patreon people. So you'll get that soon, although Patreon people can watch the original with the lower sound. But Adam Kehoe's a PhD in information science, and he's interested in AI, data science, and defense policy issues, the latter being the most important here, in that his blog here, which I'm going to share with everybody, covers just that. It covers policy issues around UAP. And I think that's really important. I think it's important in order to kind of cover what's going on right now a little bit more in a more sophisticated manner. So you could see here he's got, this story is what if Christopher Mellon succeeds? We'll talk about that. UAPs are not all one thing. What happens when it passes the Senate? Checkmate or gambit, Mellon and the UAP report. This is a really important one, I think. How will the Air Force fare under the gaze of the Senate? So a lot of really important stuff.
Wow.
Really, really good articles. If you haven't read those, you really need to check those out.
Yeah, I was unaware of Adam. And now with all that, it looks like I should not be unaware of him.
You should not, my friend. So yeah, so we discussed some of these issues, and essentially, let's start with Lou. So with Lou, I asked him, I kind of quizzed him about this, about my article. They've been really changing their stories. Why? How does this affect you? When I asked why, he's very gracious, and he's like, I don't know why. You would have to ask them, essentially. I just know what the truth is that I've been able to verify. But I kind of pressed him and I said, well, what if they continue to do this? Because this seems to have some personal ramifications to you. And he agreed. He was like, yes, this has been damaging to me and my reputation. And I certainly don't appreciate it. And he essentially, after being pressed, said he's considering further, taking steps. And he kind of inferred that, first of all, he has a lot of material he hasn't released, which confirms his position. He has, I think this is largely or partially in the form of probably documents, but also correspondence with colleagues. And he hasn't wanted to release any of that because he hasn't wanted to, reveal anybody who's been involved, who he's worked with in the past. Sort of thing, but he's kind of getting pressed at this point to release what he has to kind of finally put all this to bed. But he said he has not ruled out, and he could even take legal steps, to solve this issue. So I think that's kind of interesting that, he's willing to go as far as he needs to, although he's been taking this, these punches on the chin. He's not willing to do that forever if they keep up with this sort of thing.
Wow. So you just it's hurting his reputation, and he wants to cease that, and so he can move forward. Is that basically
that reputation and also relationships. It hurts his relationships with his former colleagues and different government,
sure.
people in the government. And so, yeah, and his credibility. So certainly, you have these articles that call into question whether he was part of ATIP, and which is kind of silly because it doesn't take a whole lot of research to find that he was. But unfortunately, not everyone in the media wants to do that research.
Yeah, it's kind of also a little bit silly because how could he know everything that he's, displayed that he's known if he wasn't part of that?
Right.
I mean, it can't be from a buddy or someone, you're not supposed to talk about something like that. Of course, if you're in a program like that, you wouldn't share it with a friend.
I mean, and even, the pilots or Kevin Day, the radar operator on Nimitz, they've all confirmed that they talked to Lou, during those ATIP years. So
it's just right. That's right. Yeah.
Really, really wild. So we'll see what happens with all of this. I think it's going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Was it, I know you mentioned that he didn't want you to give much of an advance. I got a notice in the email too late for the interview. So he didn't even want a posting out there ahead of time too long ahead.
Yeah.
Right?
There are, how can I put it without, as you know, getting these interviews are difficult with some of these people, and even more so now. So I've been very fortunate to have my first interview with Chris Mellon. I want another one. You had one way back in the day. You were lucky to get that. So, and with Lou, it was kind of a little bit under the radar. We were flying under the radar a bit. So in order to not upset anybody who might have not wanted him to do an interview without, that's why he kind of was like, we can't make a bunch of waves that you're going to do this interview. Let's do it. And then you can get it out there. And it was kind of one of those things where it's easier to ask forgiveness and permission.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny when you're asking for these certain people through their publicists, the common response is they're traveling and they're going to be traveling for quite a while. So I wrote back the publicist, that may have worked before COVID, but not so much. So I understand what you're saying. That's basically their way of saying, not right now, go away.
Yeah. And, I'm lucky that Lou's willing to do that because he's done that before with another interview. I think my last interview with him, the same sort of thing where he had to, and it was the same situation where I kept telling my audience next week. Do
you remember what chaos that was? We both had the same thing happen.
So and then it was you didn't even have the promise for a while. I had the promise for a while. And then finally, when he was able to do it, he did both of us. So you got lucky there. But I was really hanging on the wire for a long time.
Yeah, you were. And then when I finally had him, my entire studio screwed up. Everything, every bit of equipment. He couldn't hear me. I couldn't hear him. And it was a nightmare. And then I came back down to my studio a few minutes after the interview and everything was working fine.
Well, and thank goodness for these new tools that we're using, huh?
Oh, yeah. It would have been so much easier.
Yeah. So
I want to say hi to everyone in the chat room. They're all saying hi, and I don't have access to say hi back.
Yeah. So, so luckily we got these interviews, but both of them were where he was like, hey, let's do an interview. Oh, of course, we can definitely do an interview. And little does he know, for whatever reason, there are people involved, and I won't really name names, and because it's not always a publicist, but people involved who don't want the interviews to happen.
Right.
And so he's got to kind of be sneaky with it or put down his foot a bit, which is pretty frustrating. I'm sure that's frustrating for him. Yeah. But we'll get more into the Elizondo interview and about the Kehoe interview because there's some really important topics there I want to talk about. But like you said, we do have some people in the chat. And so I guess we should acknowledge them and say hello. Hello, everybody. That's what's so fun about doing these live. But
someone noticed your haircut.
Yeah, someone noticed your glasses.
Yeah. Oh, my glasses, are they crooked still? I had them straightened. Okay.
Yeah. I think they said, oh, is that what it is? They were, for some reason, they were like, oh, nice glasses. But yeah, somebody said something about my haircut. I did get a haircut.
Same here.
In the last week.
Yep.
Martin's got one too. Looking good. I had to go to Arizona to get mine.
Oh, I know. I went to a special place to get mine. A very safe place, but I don't have much to work with anyway. So as you can see,
let's see.
Kehoe is spelled. Just to tell Mark, Kehoe is spelled without a Y. Adam Kehoe.
Correct.
Yeah.
So let's see some of the other questions. You were saying something about not being happy, which brings you to the next point. Oh, about the Navy being happy. Oh, thank you. So Neo Rabbit here said, you were saying something about not being happy, which brings you to the next point, which reminds me of what I was going to talk about. So thank you.
It worked. Wow.
So I'm going to keep that up. We'll get back to that topic, but I do want to acknowledge people. Hello from the guys in the UK. Looks like we have a few people from the UK. Quite a few. Thank you for noticing the haircut. Yes, we're talking about Elizondo. Someone said Luella Zonda. That's really cute. Has Kehoe risen? No, this is a different Kehoe. You guys look great. Yay, thanks. Oh, and Neo Rabbit's really happy they helped. You did help. Thank you so much. But yeah, Adam Kehoe's not related to Donald Kehoe. But this does remind me about people not being happy. This is what really the kind of the root of the issue, and my argument has been for quite some time when it comes to the military. A lot of people want to be so black and white. The government this, the government that. And as many people, especially like Chris Mellon or any of the Lou Elizondo, any of these people who work with the government keeps saying is that there is, everything so stovepipe. You have a lot of tons of different organizations. You have, when it comes to politicians, individuals, they have their own staff. And the point is, you've got lots and lots and lots of individuals and groups of people and agencies and departments and branches, and they're all doing their own thing. They don't all talk together, nor do they all have the same opinions about things. And that's, I think, what we're seeing here with these kind of a bit of attacks on Lou Elizondo, calling him out or, countering the things that he said. Because this has been the case the whole time. And you can see this if you read Colonel Ruppelt's book about Project Blue Book way back in the day. He wrote this back in like the 60s, that the military's never been on the same page with the UFO topic. There have been people who think there's nothing to it, and a lot of people who think there's something to it. And there's been kind of this struggle in the background, and there has been no consensus. And then here we get to the modern day, we have organizations like the Navy saying, yes, we do take this seriously. We're creating new policies. But at the same time, there must be some people in the Navy that are not happy with what's happening right now, because they are saying, at least according to George, this upcoming statement is going to be from the Navy, surprisingly, which is pretty weird. Then you have like Adam Kehoe called out in his article, the Air Force, which has been mysteriously silent. We actually discussed this topic in my interview with him. I mean, they're the people who are in charge of the airspace. And here's his thoughts, which I think are interesting. That it could be that one of the roles this request will serve is that we will see who will respond, who will at least make the effort to respond, and then they can see who are essentially the troublemakers. And he's interested to see if the Air Force does not make the effort to make some sort of UAP response. How is that going to make them look? He thinks that's going to make them look really bad if they're the one group that's supposed to be in charge of this, has the official history of investigating this, and then they don't want to be involved. They want to kind of snub their nose at the Senate when the Senate asks for information. That could become an issue, and that could make them look really bad. So just so much to look at with all of this.
I may be totally wrong on this take, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Okay,
But
let's
it
see.
almost seems to me that it's unprecedented that the government would make a statement about someone that's a retired civilian at this point. I just have never heard of anything like that. Why would they? I mean, that's pretty unprecedented, isn't it? I mean,
I
you
don't
think about it.
know.
I mean, it's a strange situation that they would make a statement about a person. You know,
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. I don't follow the history of all of this sort of thing close enough to know. So I guess you would have to look at, I think Snowden might be an example, or other whistleblowers,
oh
or other
yeah,
people who
yeah. I mean,
shared.
yeah, Snowden is kind of it was a big deal, a very big deal.
Yeah. And he was like, the difference, like Elizondo likes to say he's not a whistleblower because whistleblowers are like Snowden. They're revealing classified information, and that's illegal to do that. That's why
Yeah.
Snowden's in trouble. Lou didn't reveal any information that was classified, but apparently it was information that they didn't want out, and information that he was told not to take to certain levels, but he did anyway. So what he did wasn't illegal, but obviously some people are still not happy about it. I think Mark brings up a good quote here from John Alexander, which I think is really important, is that the UFO community the kind of claims that the military is completely incompetent, except when it comes to covering up UFOs. And John Alexander makes the argument that no, they're incompetent across the board. And of course, he's someone who spent a career in the government and was an inspector general in the Army, which is a really important thing, because an inspector general, these are the guys who are essentially the referees. They know all the rules, and they're making sure everybody follows the rules. So you have to get a special education, and it's hard. There's not many people that know all the rules, and John does. And so John's point is that it's mainly a dropping of the ball across the board.
Wow.
Which gets into some of the other conversations Adam and I had. And Adam makes a really good point that we have to remember that UAPs are more than just, what we think they could be, what the UFO community may think it is, which is, alien spacecraft. When they're looking at these UAPs, we're hearing a lot about drones, and that upsets some people in the UFO community. But that's what the most important probably thing here is. The point is that Mellon and others are making is that because of this UFO, this taboo around UFOs, you're ignoring unidentified reports of unidentified objects, in particular that are flying in sensitive airspace, including, and we hear the most about, this is where we have the most documentation, over nuclear facilities. For instance, we have this report from Dean Johnson that came out. Tim McMillan wrote about this, but the Colorado drone incursions, they don't know what those were. And Dean Johnson said he found something like 50 plus reports of drones incursions on nuclear power facilities, in which they've only resolved 5 of those. That's huge. That is exposing a major threat.
Sure. And vulnerability.
And vulnerability. So when you're talking about having a UAP task force, they're talking about drones so much because that's going to be a large percentage of what they're going to be doing, I think. I think we're going to hear drones from them a lot. We might not hear a lot about the actual unidentifieds. And that's the question, too, of what are they going to do with the actual unidentifieds? They may say, well, we have 5% of these cases. We don't know what it is. That's it. And the story, are they going to put up a group that's going to scientifically investigate those? Apparently, they've talked to NASA, or at least NASA has replied, we would only do it if it's scientific and it's completely transparent. So I think that's really interesting. That's the way science should be. That'd be nice if that happens, kind of like a SETI type of thing. But at the same time, they've got to worry about counterintelligence and not tipping your hat on as far as what our technology is or what we don't always want our enemies to know if we know what their cutting edge secret technology is either. So there are a lot of complicated situations and scenarios to run through. And that's kind of what Adam and I were mainly talking about, is really how complicated all of this gets around policy and everything. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be worked out with all of this.
Yeah. And, drones I mean, they're getting more and more sophisticated, and they're definitely not going away. And yeah, someone just posted a question. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, that's a great question too. Mary asks, was wondering if the Space Force is a branch off of the Air Force, transferring some higher ups over. I'm not sure what she meant there. Or has it been around for a while? Great question. It has been around for a while. In fact, really, it was the Air Force Space Command. And Air Force Space Command was created in the 80s. And for the same reason that the Space Force was created. It actually, even before Trump became president, there was this talk of wanting the Air Force Space Command to be its own branch of the military. Why? Who do we listen to? Who drives everything when it, these big issues? Corporate America, the defense industry, essentially. The United States relies on satellites more than every other country. Our phones, GPS, everything. We live and die by what satellites are telling us. And all of these and meanwhile, you've got Russia and China creating anti-satellite weaponry and sharing that information on a regular basis and bragging about it. China blowing up one of its own satellites, which is now somewhat endangered, the ISS. That's what
the debris.
The debris. That's what people have been talking about, is that, hey, we need to pay more attention to defending our satellites and space, and we need a bigger budget. You've got to protect our satellites, is what the industry has been saying. The Air Force has been saying, we have it under control. We're fine. That's what Air Force Space Command is there for. We've got it all under control. Well, there have been some people, and it has, I think, been mostly Republican push, at least lately, to create this separate branch. That's what finally happened. Trump had the executive order where he made it happen and calls it the Space Force, which has been made fun of a lot. But it's essentially the same thing. Their headquarters, right where Air Force Space Command headquarters are. First guy in charge, the guy who is in charge of Air Force Space Command. So it's essentially Space Command now having their own branch of the government. And that's what that's related to. And I think we all have to be careful. We got to really think, and that's why it's great to have someone like Adam involved. What are the policy decisions? What are these guys thinking about when they're coming up with these things or making these moves? That's what Chris Mellon really has his hand on the pulse of this. Or reporters like Brian Bender, who spends a lot of time in DC and, knowing the buzz and has tons of sources out there. So he knows what the buzz is out there going on all this. People like Tyler Rogaway, who paid attention to defense. Some of us think, well, obviously this is to tell us about the aliens and to tell us about Roswell and stuff like that. No, not necessarily at all. It's much, much, much more complicated than that. And there are a lot of other considerations that are going on besides all of that sort of thing. So really, what the UFO community figures is going on is not even close to really what the main concerns people are thinking of. And even if you do believe those are some of the things that are out there, like a place where they have, the Roswell craft, or even if you believe Bob Lazar and it's out at Area 51, you still have to consider all of these other bureaucratic and these other political type things, budgetary type things that are going on. And really, it's important for all of us who are interested in getting to the answers to have a very strong understanding of these things in order to know where to look and where to really spend our advocacy kind of resources to be most effective. So really, I kind of think at this point, for those of us who are interested in getting those answers, we need to wait for this UAP report, which won't come out till next March. And then along those lines or during that time, also advocate for some sort of scientific investigation of the true unknowns, that we don't want to just fill. And this is what, of course, the intelligence community is thinking. The military's Mellon is kind of addressing. We need to fill this gap. We've got a blind spot when it comes to unidentified objects. Some of these could be technologies from adversaries that we're not paying attention to. That's why we need to fill this gap, and that's why we need this UAP task force. And so that's going to be, that's their selling point, not that we need the answers to Roswell. That's not really the main focus that they're selling this stuff with. They're just, so I think that's important for us to remember.
Yeah. One of the questions that has come up on my show in the past, and because someone claimed that we have satellite capability to detect things coming in from outer space. And so if that's a possibility, then we should be able to see UFOs. Coming in and out, and the government would know, that type of thing. Have you ever looked into any of that stuff?
Well, we do track everything in space, everything
like the
in orbit.
Space debris and everything. I know we track that. Yeah.
So NASA tracks all of that. NORAD tracks all of that stuff. And we should have some capabilities, but it all comes back to, what do they do with those? And that's the big question I think that we're looking at here. And certainly that is also the question that Chris Mellon and the To the Stars guys are raising, and especially Lou is raising, that some of these things that we're observing are not ours. They're technology beyond ours. So what do we do with that? We can't just ignore it. John Alexander, who keeps, I think, he's been in this for decades, and I think he's been one of the most accurate people when he describes what's going on behind the scenes, because he's also spent a lot of time investigating and looking into that very subject. Is that there is a lot of it's a hot potato issue. We don't know what it is. We don't want to know. We don't care. There are instances, and I think people like Paul, the guy out of Australia, Paul Dean. Yeah. He's seen that, some of these cases have been forwarded to some different scientific organizations. So at least it seems some scientific organizations have secretly looked into these, but to what extent, that's really hard to say. So that's the main point, is that, hey, there are things that we don't know what they are. They don't seem to be human. We need to also research those. And that's what Mellon and like Lou are asking for, but almost from the premise of that does not currently exist, and it needs to. But I guess to amend that is, I think they're coming from the perspective is that does not currently exist as far as we know, and it needs to.
Yeah.
And that is another thing I asked Elizondo about, was UFO crashes. And I asked him specifically to kind of challenge him and the ideas that Eric Davis has put forward to clarify his stance. And he did. And he's not saying, he's like, there's hearsay, and there's a difference between hearsay, what we know, and what we can prove. And we can prove that there are objects that crash, like meteorites that crash on this planet, and that we do have, discover different materials from these situations. What we need to pay attention to is if we do find materials that look to be manufactured, that we really need to pay attention to those. So he kind of clarified that he's not saying he knows that there are any crashes, but that we do need to make sure we're looking for any potential manufactured, material from elsewhere. And I think it's a good point that he makes, and he's not alone in that. I mean, there was a SETI speech not too long ago where along those same lines, and there are scientists who have also made those points.
Now, what was in the news? If anyone's looking at UFO news today, you'll see that there was a Russian that was up in the International Space Station that released a video footage of the Aurora Borealis, and then it shows what's spread across the news media as a UFO. But you were saying that it's a Google satellite. Is that what that was, Alejandro?
Yeah. Yeah, those are the Google satellites that they saw from the space station. So,
And it's it looks, if you didn't know better, you look at that footage and you'd say, that looks like the side half of a triangle UFO with the light spaced, perfectly evenly. That's what it looks like when you first see it.
yeah. And I think, a lot of some people are talking about controlling our perceptions in the chat and this sort of thing. I think we have to I don't let them trick you to be off the objective, blah, blah, blah. I think that, as far as that goes, I always reference Nick Pope. Nick Pope worked for the DoD looking into UFOs. He said, we use spin and dirty tricks. So on the one hand, if the media called and said, hey, what about this UFO case that someone said you're looking into? He would say, no, we're not looking into little green man out in that area. Media would laugh about it and not take it seriously.
You mean I just want to correct you, the MOD.
Oh, the MOD.
Yeah.
Correct. In the UK. And that would throw them off. They wouldn't pay attention. Meanwhile, they really are looking into some of these things. So they would, use some tricks to keep people off the scent so that people wouldn't know that they were taking it seriously. Same thing, I think, could definitely be said here in the United States. Those of us have been looking into this, and I wrote this whole article about this, how we've been gaslighted for the last few decades by the government regarding UFOs, where we're like, hey, there's some serious cases here, and they're like, oh, this is silly. We haven't taken this seriously since 1969. They were wrong. They were lying. That wasn't true at all. So I mean, that's kind of how that works. So I wouldn't really look into it as deeply as some kind of big mind control thing, but I would also say, and I did bring this up with Luis Elizondo too, is that what about disinformation? They brought that up in one of the episodes of Unidentified. And I think that's one area where the UFO community has been very lax and kind of had their own blind spot. One of the things I argue, and I know I harp on this over and over again, is this Richard Doty situation where this guy was in the Air Force Office of Special Investigations and admits to putting out disinformation. Yet we don't pay attention to that. Not only that, a lot of the major UFO researchers, will reference the type of crap he was putting out and say, oh, it could be real.
Dulce Underground bases. Look at the teeth that had.
Then when you question them and say, well, when this guy admitted it was disinformation, and they say, well, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Some of it's got to be true. Good disinformation's partially true. But the true parts are not the parts that you're looking for. For one, they're not related. The truth parts are not going to be related to any secrets where you can actually figure something out. That's the first part. The second part is you're believing it whole cloth. If only a portion of it is true, you are buying all of it. So which part is a disinformation if you're buying all of it? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So I think that's another area that we really need to look into, is what areas of where there have been disinformation. And we know that, there's a recent interview with George Knapp and T.D. Barnes. I think there's an interview it was on Unidentified as well. He was on there. He's a guy who worked at Area 51. And so we do know that Area 51, they encouraged and they talked about how it was advantageous to them when people would report the things they worked on, such as a U-2 or the SR-71 or the stealth fighters or bombers, stealth, aircraft. When they were reported as UFOs, that actually helped them. And so they weren't opposed to that. They kind of like that.
Yeah. That was a good shield for them to keep that secret.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing, which we really need to figure out how much of that happened, what was done, and to make sure that we're not, going off on these wild goose chases. So I don't know. To be honest, it's one of the reasons I was a little bit disappointed with the UFO field after, Elizondo had come out and everything, is that just, we were given this gift essentially of this major breakthrough, this maybe the largest breakthrough in the history of this topic. And instead of really examining the meat and the details of what happened, how this works, how it will affect government, a lot of the things I was talking about with Adam Kehoe or Chris Mellon or Luis Elizondo, instead of paying attention to those places where we can insert ourselves and, get in there and really figure out what's going on and also prod and hopefully dislodge even more information, lots of the UFO community just doubled down on their dubious worldviews that they had established before any of this. And how can I fit what they're saying into what I've sold my audience or what I've got here? And I just don't. Unfortunately, and that doesn't really get us anywhere, and it's really frustrating. But
no
I don't
respect, Simone says. No respect at all.
No respect.
Yeah.
Oh no, she says I disrespect or discredit.
Oh, I see. That was the continuation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm not sure what she wasn't disrespecting. We'd have to go up and read all of this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well,
things like
I like what Jeff Perry wrote. The upside in this is that there are disinfo ops. They will leave a paper trail, a classified one. Maybe someday that will get out.
That's a great point. Yes, Jeff, that's a great point. That's why I FOIA'd the whole Doty situation and why I've got I wasn't the first to get this information, but I was the first to FOIA it directly. Because in my estimation, the military had sent some Doty information out to a couple other researchers that weren't even really looking for it. And because I think they were trying to get out, hey, here's what our side of the story is, if anybody cares. Nobody did until I came along. So, I mean, and who knows? People may say, well, it could be a spin, and it could be. But at least what they did provide me were some official reports. And you can see, at least get some insight into what was going on back there. But you're right. These are the type of things that we really need to pursue to get those sort of documents to figure it all out. So, Jeff, I think you're exactly right that I think a lot of the speculation comes because we feel like we're completely impotent in our ability to do anything about any of this or to get information, but we're not. John Greenwald is a great example of all the documents he gets, but and others. I mean, look at all this stuff George Knapp has been leaking out. These documents, if it wasn't for George Knapp, he's provided maybe 9%, 90%, a lot of these documents that give us insight into ATIP and what was going on there in Nimitz. So thank goodness for that. So
Paul Dean, all the way in Australia.
Yeah, and Paul Dean in Australia, and his colleague, who's the other guy out there he works with, Keith Basterfield. I mean, those guys are getting tons of information and out of Australia. Roger Glassel in Sweden is getting a ton of information out. So it's doable. We just all got to focus. And, I think John Alexander always says this, that the CIA, whoever, they don't really need to do anything to get us off track in the UFO field because we're good enough to do it ourselves. I mean, I would say 95%, if not 99% of the UFO field is off chasing their tails or chasing these wild goose stories that they've created on their own, just fabricated out of people's fantasies, as opposed to pursuing some of this stuff. So I think we're distracting ourselves more than anybody in the CIA would distract us in the first place.
Yeah. We're a good tool just being ourselves.
So I'm trying to read some of the comments to comment with people, but they're going so fast. Really, people have a lot of feelings about all of this, which I'm not too surprised. Yeah, Jeff makes a really good point that even if there is a careerist faction that wants to obscure, they're not a cartoon bad guy with absolute power. They operate within a bureaucracy. And, and they're not also complete. I don't want to say that they're not perfect. They're human just like the rest of us. And they make mistakes just like the rest of us. We see these mistakes that are done on a regular basis. Comes back to what John Alexander said. On the one hand, we think they're all incompetent. On the other, we think they're super geniuses and hiding information. They're not. They're all regular people. So, I mean, we do have a lot more ability than I think that we give ourselves credit for to get answers and to make things move. And I guess we just all have to get on board on what we want to do. Really, what do I want? I want a scientific organization, kind of like the SCU, but on steroids, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Research, to exist. That we have a UFO SETI type of group where we have this scientific investigation of these unknowns and try to figure it out. And because I think there's some really, really interesting stuff that we can get out of that.
And more serious people are taking it serious. So yep. I think we're heading in the right direction.
Seriously.
Yeah. I forgot to add that. Yeah.
All right. So what is there any other topics, any other comments you saw you wanted to talk about?
No. I don't see anyone. Well, one just came in that looks kind of interesting already.
Oh, I already saw one too. Go for it.
Yeah. Oh, well, Jeff says the government is a big place. There exists extreme competence on all sides of the issue, and there exists a lot of incompetence on all sides of the issue.
Right.
Kind of pretty much says it all. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, and Dirk is saying bring Rich Hoffman back on. Okay, yeah, I should.
Yeah, Rich is good.
I want to bring some of the SCU guys back on. I've just been really wanting to tackle some of these really important policy issues, and of course, gotten these interviews with like Mellon and Lou, and also Anthony Lapp. I wanted to, talk to all these guys firsthand. But so I think this is a good point too. Andy says no one can control when or where the aliens choose to show themselves. There is a third party. I'm saying if, because we don't know that for certain. I don't think. I think we've got very interesting evidence to point to something, but certainly Elizondo and Mellon are of the belief that we have intelligently controlled technology beyond our own that's out there. That implies there is a third party involved, and we can't forget that this third party, if it exists, obviously does not want to be known. It's keeping itself secretly and not letting the whole entire populace know about it. If they are that secretive, then certainly they can also keep evidence from our government and keep secret from them as well. So even though the government may have, NORAD may have dozens of cases where they've tracked these things, zipping
or maybe
around.
Thousands.
Maybe thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of these cases, going back to what we were saying. It doesn't mean that it necessarily brings them that much closer. According to Eric Davis, what he told me was that, we did have a UFO crash project that we canceled in 1986 because we couldn't make heads or tails of the craft that we retrieved. So we stopped trying and put it away in a Indiana Jones type of storage warehouse, and we go visit it once in a while to see if we can figure it out. So, I mean, if that's the case, the point being that just because they have more data doesn't mean they have all the answers. So we can't make assumptions about all of this stuff. We just got to keep trotting along. And where we are right now is astronomically further than we were before. And it's just really wild to think that, if Luis Elizondo wouldn't have come forward, we probably wouldn't be here at all. Even if To the Stars was created without Lou, with all that same group of guys, that same group of guys has been around trying to do something for a long time.
Yeah.
Davis and Hal have been working with Bigelow. Mellon even worked with that group UFO Data that was going to try to create a group to obtain UFO data. Really, most of that has I would argue Bigelow has gotten the furthest out of anybody else, but without Elizondo being in the mix there to really give us insight into what was going on in the background, we might, we wouldn't be where we are right now, where UFOs are a serious topic and the Senate Intelligence Committee is asking for reports.
Yeah.
Pretty wild,
and,
huh, Martin?
It's not an embarrassing topic to talk about. I was at an art fair displaying my paintings last Saturday, and a guy came there and he's looking at my paintings, and we're talking, and all of a sudden he goes, "I thought I recognized your voice." A listener to the show. It's such a small world, but it's not like I wasn't like hiding the fact. Yeah, it was a show. We were talking UFOs and all these people around all over the place. And it's like the first time since I've been doing this that I'm not really concerned about it. I don't really care if I say, I'm doing a show on UFOs out loud in a mixed company. It's
funny you say that because I feel a lot more comfortable too. So for instance, I just started doing mortgages. So call me if you're in Arizona or California and you need a home mortgage or refinance. The rates are at their an all-time low.
Sure are. Wow.
But my point being that I was talking to a group of realtors. Now, these are ones that I worked with in Arizona. So I do know half the group very, very well. But I did not feel as worried to say that, one of the things I'm very well known for is writing about UFOs. I do feel like, when the media is talking about it so much that, we don't have to feel as shy about it as we used to. But when you do your paintings, when you put your painting up, do you put your UFO paintings up there too?
I haven't. Yeah, I just did one that I thought it came out pretty good. But
I liked it. The triangle one?
Yeah, the triangle one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah. I don't have it right here. Otherwise, I'd grab it. But
yeah. And then finally, Jeff is saying, I've met Dr. Putoff. He's kind, wise, and highly educated. And I would definitely agree with that. Putoff is very patient, comes across as a very wise and intelligent person. And, when it comes to the whole group, though, I keep saying this. This isn't a story just about Elizondo. Elizondo is certainly a big part of that. But the whole Bigelow group, Davis, Putoff, Alexander, Knapp, Colm Kelleher, Bigelow's main scientist, and so many others, they have been trying to bring credibility to very many paranormal topics scientifically for decades now. And they're a major part of all of this story. They've been out there fighting for decades. So when Elizondo says, this is a group thing that we're all doing this together.
Yeah.
There are a lot.
He said that quite a few times.
Yep, and that was his first tweet. Yeah, he did say that quite a bit.
And he congratulated the UFO community a number of times.
Yes, he did.
If it wasn't for you people out there and your interests, we wouldn't have got this far. Right. So I thought that was pretty good of him to do that.
Yeah, that was good. So Mary's saying, and we'll wrap it up here, but Mary is saying, I wish Dr. Putoff would talk more on unidentified. That would be nice. He doesn't
too much. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't too much, but and he never does on any show. But that one documentary, Third Eye Spies, I think it's called. And it's a recent documentary about the remote viewing. And it's got a lot of Hal Putoff in there. It's the most I've ever seen him talk. So Third Eye Spies. I would highly recommend people go look at that if you're a Hal Putoff fan.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? You got anything? Do you have anything going on with Podcast UFO or no?
Well, I have. I don't know if anyone out there caught the Netflix Berkshire's UFO. I thought it was great.
I've heard that. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I rarely watch something more than one time, and I got to admit, this is kind of crazy. I've watched it 3 times, and it's that good. And I do have Tom Warner. He's the artist in that, and he's basically the only person that an eyewitness saw vanish in a beam coming down from a UFO. And she's in that. She describes what she saw. She's in that episode, but it's a great episode. I hope a lot of people get to watch that.
Yeah, I've still got to go check that out.
Yeah, you will like it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Please do go check out my interviews. The Rojas Report, of course, is a subscriber service, but you can get in as low as $1.50. And in fact, if you're not aware of this, you can join right here on YouTube. So you'll see a join button on YouTube. Click that and you'll see the different levels where you can watch the archives and or join us live when we do interviews. Now, most of the live interviews have been kind of midday, so I apologize for that. And I really apologize for, this is why I used to do my show recorded all of the time, because you never know when the person you want to interview is going to be available. And when you have people like Chris Mellon or Luis Elizondo who are extremely busy and you're going to get them when you get them, I've got, last minute notice that I can let you guys know to get in there and join us for the interview. So I do apologize for that. Just keep your eye on it, because you do get messaged, and you can get messaged by YouTube or Patreon, whichever one you're on, to let you know when there's a posting. And I do let people know give them as much time as I can so you can come join us live. And I would rather, do it that way so you have the opportunity to join us live if you can, because it's fun to have people come in with their questions and comments. Yeah. And we did have a few people, even though it was such short notice, that were able to come in and on the Elizondo interview as well. So yeah, check that out. Otherwise, also check out Martin Willis on UFO Podcast. Have a great weekend.
Let's say hi to Heidi. Heidi.
Hey, look. Hi, Heidi. Heidi ho. Yeah. Hey, Heidi. I don't know why I like doing. I feel like putting my arms in the air. You can't
Heidi
even
ho,
see it.
Heidi hi, Heidi ho.
Yeah. So, thanks everybody for joining us once again. Check out Podcast UFO. Check out openminds.tv for the latest and greatest. And speaking of Heidi, she helped us out with the International UFO Congress a couple times. We've got the International UFO Congress coming up. Copycat. And so go to ufocongress.com and register right now. You'll notice that was not put in the form of a question, but a command. Go to ufocongress.com right now and register stat. So thank you, Martin.
You're welcome. Lots of fun.
Thank you all for joining us. And until next time, adios, muchachos. Good job, I think. Kinda.
Maybe. I don't know.